When it comes to the destructive power of nuclear energy, we all know about the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, or the Chernobyl nuclear disaster. But have you ever heard of the man who suffered the worst radiation burns in history due to an industrial accident? He came into direct contact with 16 kilograms of highly radioactive uranium with his bare hands and experienced horrors that no one else has faced. Calculations of the radiation levels he was exposed to clearly show that he had no chance of survival. At one point, he even cried out, "I can't take this anymore. Please stop torturing me. I'm not a lab rat." Despite his pleas, he was kept alive against his will, enduring unimaginable pain. His name was Hisashi Ouchi. Japan, a country with limited natural resources and heavily dependent on energy imports, turned to nuclear energy in response to its growing needs. Its first nuclear power plant was built in 1966, about 120 kilometers northeast of Tokyo in Tokai. Over time, many nuclear facilities were established around the plant. In 1997, an explosion in one of these facilities exposed dozens of people to radiation. The government tried to cover it up. But just 2 years later, an even greater disaster was about to unfold. Hisashi Ouchi was a 35-year-old technician working for a subsidiary of the Japanese nuclear fuel conversion company, located about 6.5 kilometers from the site of the earlier radiation accident. The company's main job was to convert uranium into enriched uranium dioxide fuel for nuclear power. This process involved mixing several elements inside a massive metal container in a carefully timed sequence. It required precision and carried significant risks. One small mistake could trigger a nuclear reaction, producing dangerous radiation. On the morning of September 30, 1999, Hisashi and his colleagues, Masamino and Yutaka Yokokawa, were assigned to prepare a batch of nuclear fuel. The company was behind on fuel rod orders, so production needed to be as fast as possible. Unaware of the potential consequences, the three technicians, none of whom were properly trained, decided to take shortcuts. Instead of using an automatic pump to add the legal 2.4 kilograms of uranium to the dissolution tank, they manually poured 16 kilograms of uranium directly using steel buckets. This amount was 7 times the legal limit. They had unknowingly added far too much uranium to the tank, exceeding safety limits. Moreover, the operation, which normally required a hydraulic pump, was done by hand. This was essentially a death sentence for them. At 10:35 a.m., the uranium mixture reached a critical mass and triggered an uncontrolled chain reaction, releasing an unprecedented amount of radiation. The technicians witnessed a shocking blue flash of light as dangerous levels of radiation and gamma rays were released into the air. Hisashi was standing directly over the tank as gamma rays filled the room. As soon as the radiation alarm went off, they realized their mistake, but it was too late. All three had been exposed to high doses of radiation and had become radioactive hazards themselves. They were the only known people to have witnessed a nuclear reaction completely unprotected. The workers began experiencing severe pain, nausea, and difficulty breathing. They were rushed to the hospital and a mass evacuation began for the local residents. The three men were immediately treated at the National Institute of Radiological Sciences in Chiba. All had been exposed to direct radiation, but at varying levels depending on their proximity to the tank. Hisashi, who had leaned over the tank while adding the uranium, received 17,000 millisieverts of radiation. Masanino, standing on the platform next to the tank to assist, received 10,000 millisieverts, and Yutaka, who was further away, got 3,000 millisieverts. For context, the international radiation safety limit is 20 millisieverts per year, and a dose of 5,000 millisieverts is considered lethal. Hisashi had been exposed to a fatal dose, roughly 20,000 times what a normal human body can tolerate in a year. This was the highest radiation dose ever recorded for a human, yet somehow Hisashi was still alive. In fact, just by looking at him, it was hard to believe he had received a deadly dose of radiation. His face was only slightly reddened, his hands swollen, and his eyes a bit bloodshot. Otherwise, he appeared fairly healthy. There was a hope that he might recover and leave the hospital after treatment. But medical tests soon revealed his lymphocyte count in the blood had dropped to nearly zero. Lymphocytes, a type of white blood cell, play a vital role in fighting infections caused by foreign agents like bacteria or viruses. They identify invaders and produce specific proteins called antibodies to attack them. Radiation had destroyed Hisashi's white blood cells, essentially wiping out his immune system. This left him defenseless against viruses, infections, and other complications. Within a day, his condition rapidly deteriorated. His skin began to peel and severe blisters formed all over his body. The young man was in unbearable pain and struggling to breathe. 3 days later, doctors decided to transfer Hisashi to Tokyo University Hospital for more advanced care. When he arrived, things only got worse. His body seemed to burn from within. His skin began to peel off, his eyelids drooped, and tissues started dying one by one. He was put on a ventilator due to fluid buildup in his lungs. His case was medically extraordinary. Professor Kazuhiko Maekawa, a leading emergency medicine specialist known in Japanese medical circles as the Yakuza of medicine, took charge of Hisashi's care. He organized a nationwide team of experts from 13 medical specialties, from blood transfusions to gastroenterology. Their mission? To save this man who looked more like a walking corpse than a patient. Hisashi was moved to a special sealed radiation ward, where he was sterilized continuously. He was tested twice daily, morning and evening, with PCR tests for 7 common viral and fungal infections. Every morning at 7 a.m., Professor Maekawa led medical examinations, followed by a coordinated treatment plan at 8 a.m. At 6 p.m., the team would regroup to review the day and plan their next steps. Maekawa even invited radiation medicine specialists from the US, France, Russia, and Germany to contribute their expertise. With his family's approval, they explored every potential treatment available in medical literature, including experimental ones with limited scientific support. But it all seemed in vain. Hisashi's rapidly worsening and unpredictable condition pushed medical knowledge to its limits. On the 6th day, a bone marrow sample was taken to assess immune damage. An expert examining cell photographs noticed chromosomes were shattered into fragments, black blotches scattered everywhere. The chromosomes could not be identified or arranged properly. Some were broken or fused together. It was clear that the chromosomes were not only damaged but completely destroyed. When chromosomes break down and can't be repaired, the body cannot produce new cells and slowly begins to decay. Hisashi was surviving on cells formed before the accident, so his appearance remained somewhat normal for the time being. But soon, his skin started peeling off. When medical tape was removed from his chest, the skin underneath peeled away with it. His feet lost skin when washed or dried with a towel. Healthy skin constantly renews itself through cell division. But in Hisashi's case, the chromosomes in the basal layer of his skin cells were destroyed by excessive neutron radiation. This halted cell regeneration. Old skin cells shed off without replacement.
As the epidermis, the protective outer layer of skin, disintegrated, Hisashi began feeling intense pain. Doctors covered him completely with cotton pads to protect the remaining skin layers, but it didn't help. Body fluids and blood oozed through his skin, soaking the gauze in hours. Changing his bandages became a daily, exhausting task for doctors and nurses, lasting up to 3 hours per session. The room temperature was maintained at 30 degrees Celsius to help. During this time, cultured skin grafts from 5 hospitals across Japan were obtained and transplanted onto Hisashi. But his body could not produce new skin cells to support these grafts, so when the bandages were removed, the skin came off again. Skin loss worsened and liters of body fluids leaked from his exposed flesh every day. He was losing up to 10 liters of blood-tinged fluid daily. Since his body couldn't produce blood either, he needed frequent blood transfusions, more than 10 per day during his first week in intensive care. Despite all efforts, after a week of treatment, the young man shouted at the doctors, "I can't take this anymore, I'm not a lab rat." But his family insisted, no matter the cost, that the doctors keep him alive. So even though logically his chances were 0 based on radiation exposure, they continued experimental treatments against his wishes. Stem cell transplant specialist Hisamura Hiraiyu proposed a revolutionary treatment never before tried on radiation victims: stem cell transplantation. This method would quickly restore Hisashi's ability to produce new blood cells. Healthy stem cells were taken from a donor and later given to the patient through an intravenous line. These cells traveled to the bone marrow and replaced the damaged ones, allowing healthy blood cells to be produced again. The only challenge was finding a perfect match for Hisashi, so they began testing potential donors. Fortunately, his sister was a perfect match. Healthy stem cells were taken from her and transplanted to Hisashi. The procedure was experimental, with a very low chance of success. The medical team anxiously waited for 10 days to see if the transplant worked. On the 18th day, good news arrived. His sister's cells had taken root in Hisashi's body. His white blood cell count rose rapidly from 900 to 8,000 within 48 hours. Ironically, since there was no immune system left to fight these new cells, the absence of immunity actually helped him temporarily. But on the 26th day, disaster struck again. The transplanted cells began dying off one by one. His intestines could no longer digest food properly. This showed that even simple treatment were not enough. He became dependent on blood transfusions to survive. Even though the doctors knew there was little they could do and that death might be the better outcome, they remained determined to keep him alive. In the following weeks, his body began to completely break down. His kidneys and liver failed, making him dependent on dialysis 24 hours a day. Except for his back, almost no skin remained on his body. His entire body was covered in raw, bloody wounds. The muscles in his arms liquefied, and the tissues around his eyes deteriorated, causing bleeding. His eyelids could no longer close, and he sometimes cried bloody tears. To prevent dehydration and death from hypothermia, doctors used bandages that covered his entire body, along with machines to support failing organs. Despite all this, his heart rate climbed from a normal 60 to 100 beats per minute to between 120 and 164. On the 27th day, he suddenly suffered severe diarrhea.
A colonoscopy revealed that the vital mucus layer lining his intestines was mostly gone. This mucus layer is responsible for absorbing nutrients and fluids, but even water entering his body quickly passed through as diarrhea. This meant neither digestion nor absorption was possible. His intestines continuously bled and stopped functioning. Repeatedly, the young man begged the doctors to let him die. The hope for recovery was almost gone. Doctors focused on maintaining his condition rather than expecting a cure. His condition was truly devastating. He was on a ventilator around the clock. His body couldn't produce new cells, couldn't digest nutrients, and his skin was decaying, adding new pains every moment. To ease his unbearable pain, he was given 200 milligrams of fentanyl every hour, a synthetic narcotic 100 times stronger than morphine. This amount is equivalent to what's used during open brain surgery. But because of his diarrhea, the drug didn't stay in his body long enough to relieve his pain. On the 59th day in the hospital, another disaster struck. He suffered a heart attack and his heart stopped beating for 49 minutes. His family agreed he should be resuscitated, so the doctors brought him back to life. Within an hour, he suffered 3 more heart attacks. Though his heart was beating again and his brain active, he no longer moved or responded to stimuli. He was medically declared to be in a vegetative state. Tests showed his kidneys and liver were failing, and his heart could only function with the help of vasopressors, drugs that raise blood pressure in critically low patients. More than 2 months had passed since Hisashi was admitted, and all treatments had failed. Doctors could only replace lost fluids and support damaged organs with machines and medication. With no options left, Professor Miyakawa told the family that if Hisashi's heart stopped again, it would be best not to attempt resuscitation. His family last saw him on December 20th. Staff replaced the thick gauze on his face with a thinner one so they could see him clearly. Despite all efforts, on December 21, 1999, at 11:21 a.m., Hisashi died of multiple organ failure. An autopsy revealed something incredible. Despite his other organs being decayed, swollen, and shattered, his heart was completely unharmed. Though strained, there was no burn or decay on it. To this day, no one fully understands how this was possible. After the accident, 310,000 people living within 10 kilometers of the facility were ordered to stay indoors for 24 hours. In the following 10 days, 10,000 people were screened for radiation exposure. More than 600 people showed varying levels of contamination, but none suffered as much as Hisashi and his colleague. Masato, who received the second highest radiation dose, underwent blood, skin, and stem cell transplants. Tragically, none of these treatments worked, and he died of lung and liver failure on April 27, 2000. Still, his suffering was far less severe than Hisashi's. Utaka, the supervisor of the two deceased workers, suffered a mild radiation sickness. After 3 months of treatment, he recovered. However, in October 2000, he was charged with negligence. Investigators concluded that the accident was caused by regulatory oversight failures, inadequate safety measures, and dangerously insufficient training. In October 2000, 6 employees, including the company president, were found guilty of professional negligence causing death and sentenced to 2 to 3 years in prison. All insisted that the materials they used were not as dangerous as believed. The company was ordered to pay $121 million in compensation to local residents who had to evacuate their homes during the accident. In 2005, the facility was demolished. Until then, the tank responsible for the accident remained radioactive for 6 years. The tank was eventually removed and taken to a nuclear history museum. During this period, Japan's nuclear industry underwent a major transformation. Strict 3-month inspections and adherence to special laws became standard to prevent future accidents. This is the incredible and deeply tragic story of Hisashi Ouchi. Despite having no chance of survival, he was treated like a lab rat, subjected to various experimental treatments. He was one of the people who experienced death in one of the worst ways possible. If you found this video interesting, please don't forget to like it and subscribe if you haven't already. Your support means a lot to me.